Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 9 and oh my god. I think we just got, it has to be minimum. I think regardless of who you are, even if you are like one of the most nitpicky people of all time, I think that has to be one of the top 10 episodes ever of the show. And there's going to be some recency bias in there probably to some degree. But I think even at the end of the day, after a rewatch, that's still going to be top 10. The emotions, the nostalgia, the connections, the looping. Holy balls. That's the only term I can use. Oh my God. I can't believe what just happened. And I was thinking, theories went, across the board in regards to how certain things are going to happen. And the big thing is they did it. They did that moment. They actually did it. Of course, we're talking about episode 10. We're talking about episode 10, otherwise known as A New World Part 1. Spoiler it, because I can't contain myself. Spoiler it. Let's talk about it. But of course, let me know in the comment section down below. What did you think of this episode? What would you give out of 10? Would you make it a top 10 episode for you as a whole throughout the entire show? I mean, man, that was good. Eric Wallace, he wrote and directed the episode and he smashed it out of the park. It's the best job he's ever done, I think, in just regards to one episode because he was so involved with it. And I know Eric Wallace deserves some criticism from here and there because some of the stuff he's done, but you have to applaud him when he does a great job. Not even great, he nails it. He nails it this episode. Wow. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, what you thought of it and what you think about going forward for the rest of this storyline. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, you enjoyed the episode, drop a like on the video, show support. Oh my God. Obviously last week, nothing really overly relevant outside of seeing Kyone's powers develop a bit more, and we get a bit more of that in this episode. But really, once we go back in time, we're stuck there. We're stuck there like Barry is, which I think is good. I wouldn't have liked it if we were bouncing around too much. They did it right. They did the right thing, in regards to this, like the pacing of this episode. They did it perfectly. But yeah, overall, this episode was just, as I said, it's like a top 10 episode, I think, of the series, in my opinion. Honestly, for a rewatch, it could go top 5 just because of, it felt like, I'm trying to think of the words to describe it. It felt like it wasn't fan service. There was a bit of fan service there, but I think it was like a perfect piece of this show, if that makes sense. And it felt like the perfect counterpart to the season 1 finale, and maybe just season 1 as a whole. Oh man, it's so good. But let's just break it down because there's a bunch of stuff to talk about. So we open this episode with someone. It's someone mysterious. They're in Joe and Cecile's house. They're singing, I guess that's why they call it the blues. They're the Elton John song. They're just sort of like humming it and then singing it a bit. It's on the radio, I think it was. But they're in Joe and Cecile's house. But it's not Joe or Cecile. I thought maybe it was Barry or like an older Barry. But it's like, no. And they're getting ready for their work day and they're on their way to Mercury Labs. They work in Mercury Labs, but we couldn't really tell what time period. It looked maybe a bit futuristic, but not really. It didn't look that futuristic at the same time. I was like, okay, it's a bit ambiguous in regards to what time period it's in. And we see that it's Eddie, or at least it's someone that looks like Eddie Thorne. And there's no name. They cover the name tag even on the badge they get, but they work at Mercury Labs. It looks like Eddie Thorne. It's played by Rick Cosnett. But there's no name of, like, they don't say Eddie, they don't say Mr. Thorne, nothing like that. His name is ambiguous. The time period is ambiguous. This whole characters are ambiguous, even right up until the end of the episode. Actually, even at the end of the episode, it's ambiguous. We still don't know. Actually, we know one thing, which we'll talk about then. But even then, we still don't know who the hell this person is. Now, one thing, the new intro with the whole, like, the blue lightning, cobalt blue sort of thing, really cool. And even each episode has a subtitle. So the storyline is called A New World, but the subtitle for this episode was Reunion, which it very much was in multiple angles. So I really like that. Very interested to see what the other parts are called going forward. Now, I must say, this episode did really feel like the beginning of the end in multiple ways. Like, obviously, the main storyline we get, but even with some of the side characters as well. Like, we have like some stuff with Chester and Allegra, which I didn't really care about, but it was mainly around Allegra's suit or something. And then we do catch up with Joe and where he and Cecile's future lies, which is this new house out in the country. And we even have Kyone learning, with Kyone, we learned it's been about 9 months or so since she was born. And we can see that her powers have leveled up. And she can sort of like break down into like smoke or something and then reform. A bit weird, but it's something different, But she's been going around like doing all this naturey sort of thing like that. So they're definitely building her up to be important, I think, come to the end of the season or the series. But we do see that Iris is well along in her pregnancy. That's a way to put it. Quite the baby bump there. And it sort of highlights another time jump since we last saw her. And she gets her Pulitzer nomination and she's very surprised. Her and Barry are surprised. And I was surprised that she and Barry were surprised because they knew it was going to happen. But anyway, before they can celebrate too much, Barry starts to like kneel over in pain or bend over in pain. And he's like covered in this blue lightning and then randomly transported back to the year 2000, Walkmans and all. And you would think, oh, well, just run home, Barry. That's easy. But he tries to run back to the year 2023, but he is blocked off from doing so. He is stuck here and he's going to have to try and figure it out on his own. So have fun, Barry. Now, Barry does go to the CCPD. I thought he might have gone to somewhere else, but I think it's because maybe they couldn't get the actors physically to do it. So they just did the CCPD and wrote some stuff around it. But he goes to the CCPD in order to talk to Joe to hopefully get some information on other people. But he first runs into not Captain Singh, but Detective Singh, looking like his comic book counterpart, which was cool. But Barry does speak to Joe, who is still just like a uniformed officer of the department, like a beat cop pretty much. And Barry needs Joe to get in contact with Tina McGee, as that is who could possibly help him with the current situation he's in, with Barry struggling to really properly communicate in fear of messing the timeline, which is understandable, not being able to tell Joe who he is. And Joe is actually willing to help Barry just from a gut feeling. But then Barry realizes that he is on the day of the night of his mother's murder, March 18th, 2000. And this just completely wipes him out and sends his brain elsewhere. But we did see Barry trying to get into contact with Martin Stein or Professor Stein for some help as well. And I think they got Victor Garber back to do that recording. It was a completely new recording, I'm pretty sure, unless they mixed and matched some audio from, Flash and then Legends when Victor Garber was, on there playing Martin Stein. But I think it was new. They could just got him to go down to I guess the Warner Brothers studios and record something there on the audio thing. But then again, maybe he filmed something up in Vancouver, something else, and went into one of the studios there to do it. I don't know, but he was just on the phone. I'm pretty sure it was a new recording, which was, pretty cool. But Barry does see his parents across the street, but as he is transfixed on them, just can't believe he's they're right there, he is knocked over by Reverse Flash, a big streak of red lightning, with Nora and Henry running to his aid. And Nora does note that he looks just like her father, which is what she did as she was dying at the end of season 1. So that was a nice sort of tie in there as well. But I must say that hospital room scene, after Barry sort of recovered from being knocked over, Grant knocked it out of the park. He was really, really good in that scene. And Barry, or as Barry calls himself, Bart, is trying his hardest to not really interact with his parents any more than he has to, just because of his fears of affecting the timeline and everything like that, which I thought, makes a lot of sense. But they're just too nice, and they're trying to be as good at people as possible and as they can, and they even invite Barry out to lunch at their favorite restaurant. Now, we do see Joe and Singh at the place where Barry is knocked over because they're just sort of investigating what happened there because it's a bit suspicious. And this is where Joe finds the blue crystal, which we'd seen at the end of last season, but just on the floor there. And it's sort of speaking to him in this demonic voice. When he picks it up, he's impacted by it. It sort of goes into his hand or something like that. And he gets these glowing blue eyes and all. So, yep, Joe's being used as a bit of a device for destruction, if you want to put it. Now, the lunch scene at Zatara was pretty good between the, Barry and, his two parents of Henry and Nora in the past. And just it's weird because Barry's trying to not interact with them, but he's also embracing the time that he's spending with them. And I don't know how you could, I'm trying to put myself into Barry's shoes and how that would be and how you would feel and how you would go about it, just because the consequences of doing too much. And you can understand the emotional, not trauma, but the emotional stress, I guess, that Barry's going under because he wants to stay there. He wants to interact with them, but he knows he really shouldn't. It's one of those really difficult situations. And I think once again, it was really well done between all the actors involved. But Barry does run off, where he is then encountered by Eobard Thorne, who just immediately starts messing with Barry, just making fun of him and stuff like that. And that's typical Eobard. But Barry does threaten to kill him, though it's obviously an empty threat. Thorne's begging for Barry to do it because he knows he won't do it. But when Eobard does question why Barry is back in the year 2000, because Thorne knows why he's there. Thorne has a specific reason as to why he is back here right now. He doesn't know why Barry's there. He's like, okay, this is a bit random. Why the hell are you back here? And Barry accuses Eobard of doing it, but he has no part in all of it. Like, he's just like, hey, I'm not here to hang out with you. I'm here to do my own thing. So, yeah, what's going on? Why are you here? Now, I thought it was really random how we had Barry and Thorne having a beer together. I thought, okay, that's weird. Where Barry does remember that Thorne's original plan wasn't to kill Nora. It was to kill young Barry. It completely transforms his view on this day and like what's meant to happen and everything like that. But that scene with Barry giving into Thorne's plan and sort of even giving Thorne the satisfaction at that point that he has won their duel was great. Just, I guess, because it made Thorne a bit cocky going into what happens later in the episode. So, you know, like their relationship in this episode was really good. And I understand, like I've always said, I understand why people wanted more of the Matt Ledger reverse Flash and Eobard Thorne because of this stuff. It was just where the show was at certain points. You couldn't. It made much more sense that it was the Wells-Abad or Tom Cavanaugh version. And it really makes you wonder, like, what could have been if there maybe was more scenes between them in other seasons and stuff like that, because the Flashpoint stuff was great. Obviously, this episode was great. But I think the fact that this maybe works so well because there wasn't that much. So Barry's used to dealing with another version of Thorne. And I think that's maybe why this works so well in this. But it feels like they've been acting alongside each other for years and they're so comfortable with each other. That's how good the rivalry was there. And it was just done so well. But we did get that final chat with Henry and Nora, you know, with Barry at the hospital, which I thought was really nice. And sort of Barry getting some sort of, I want to say closure around the whole day. But this is where Barry starts to hear a demonic voice similar to what Joe heard earlier. And I thought he was going to walk around the corner and just flat out see Cobalt Blue. And that's because it's not Cobalt Blue, but it's Joe in another area of the hospital. And Barry, you know, was thinking that it was like Joe sort of tapped into his future self because he's like, I understand what you're going through, Barry, everything like that. But it's not that. It's probably the worst possible situation outside of that. Now, whoever is in control of Joe is very vague with who they are and sort of what they are specifically going to do, with Possessed Joe, as I'm going to call him, shooting Barry with a blast of energy just sort of like out of his wrists. It was like, because that's where like the crystal, I guess, was like embedded. So it's like pretty powerful. Now, we do see that there's a doctor in the hospital who's sort of helping coordinate things, and that's actually Ramsey Rosso's mother. I'm pretty sure her last name was Rosso, and I think that's meant to be like a younger version of Ramsey's mother who died in season 6, I think it was. So that was really cool that they had that bit of connection there. But Possessed Joe is sort of like just taunting Barry for a fight, but Barry can't really fight as it will hurt Joe and maybe even kill him potentially, because that's still a human body for Joe. And Barry looks like he's done for, to be completely honest. And I must say, actually, the fight scene in that room that they were in, like it was like a storage room, almost felt like an episode of Arrow, but with like Flash meta powers. I thought it was really, really cool. But yeah, Barry looks like he's done for, but he's able to snap out of it with the blue crystal being released from Joe and fading away. So it's like, okay, well, where's it going now? Is this going to be used in other episodes? I don't know. But this is where we get the big moment of the episode, the one that people were very curious about whether this was going to happen specifically in this fashion. So Barry sprints off. He sprints off to face off against Thorne as he is on his way to kill young Barry, you know, on the night of, you know, what happens there. But Barry says he isn't there to save his younger self or even Nora, but he's there to save Thorne himself. And Barry does bring up the coming out party for Thorne in the future that was ruined by Barry, that he was told about last season in Armageddon. And Barry does apologize and then sort of tries to, I guess, warn Thorne, but Thorne doesn't, you know, play along with it or to play into it. And he runs off to do what he has to do at Barry's house. And you can see Barry for a moment sort of collect himself and go, is this it? Like he sort of like, it seems like he double, like has a, not an overthink, but just like double thinks or double checks what he's about to do. And then he runs after Thorne. And I was like, they're doing it. They're actually going to do it, aren't they? And this is when our Barry from 2023, the season 9 Flash, becomes the original Flash or original timeline Flash that we've seen in that night, the one that tells the younger Barry from season 1 not to come in. They fully connect it. They recreate the scene where he's in the new suit, everything like that. They did it. They did what everyone or a lot of people wanted them to do. They actually did it. I wasn't shocked at that point, because the scene on the road where Barry runs after him is like, what's happening now? But they did it. And I was very impressed. They actually did it. I didn't think they would. I wasn't really sure they were even going to revisit this night. But they did it in a very unique way, with Barry reliving the day and getting to live that day. And him having that closure allowed him to go about what he did in that fashion. So well done. Because as they do say, Nora's death is a fixed point, and like I think it's said by Barry that though it's the worst day of his life, this day in the year 2000, him getting there and getting to experience it and spend time with his parents before, I guess specifically Nora is killed and then Henry gets taken away by the cops, it gave him the peace that he needed. It gave him that closure. And I thought that was great. But this is short-lived because Barry is zapped away again like he was in front of Iris early in the episode, but we don't get to see where he goes. We do get to see Thorne, though, trapped there, not being able to get back, and that completely does the cycle again. So he's going to go, kill Wells, become Wells, start Star Labs, make Barry the Flash when he's much younger. We've just seen the commencement. You could pretty much go watch season 1 now after this episode. It's great. It's like the origin story for that whole journey there. So well done. But that's not it. We get set up for the rest of this storyline because we then cut back to Eddie, or the Eddie Thorne looking character, I guess, in his lab with the power short circuiting. We can tell it's the future just because of some of the tech that's being used. But there's this red lightning storm outside taking place. And it's very similar to something we've seen before, maybe something back in season 1. But we instead of like a yellow lightning storm or anything like that, we see a negative Speed Force version of how Barry got his powers with the red lightning, but with this Eddie Thorne looking character. But instead, he wakes straight back up after being hit. There's no coma for him. It's like, hey, no slouching around. You got to get to work right now. And this is then when we see a classified CCPD document appear just in front of him on the floor. And I was like, okay, who's this going to be about? I thought it was going to be about who it was, but at the same time, I was like, there's no name on the front. And we see that it's a document about the death, or an incident report, might I say, about the death of Eddie Thorne back in 2015. And I was going to say, like that, like it was his, Thorne, like, that's my last name, but who's Eddie or something. But he has no idea who Eddie Thorne is at all, as if he doesn't know who the Eddie side is, but maybe even the Thorne side either. And I'm sitting there going, What is it specifically? What is specifically going on? Now, I am not sure at all whether this means he just doesn't know who Eddie is, but he might be a Thorne, or the Eddie Thorne thing is gone, or is this Eddie? Is this Eddie from the end of season 1 that's been transported to the future? I am not sure. I am not sure which way it's going to go. And the end of the episode does not give us really any suggestion, just outside of the fact he has no idea who Eddie Thorne is. Well, I've just realized, I guess here's the thing. We don't know his first name. We don't know his first name. We don't know his last name. Now, my whole theory around this has been that he is the illegitimate son of Eddie Thorne. However, if he's the illegitimate son, he went maybe into the foster system, or was a single mother raised him, and he has the surname of whoever his mother is. It could be Simpkins or something, or Simpson. Marge Simpson was his mother. So his last name is Simpson, but he is still the son of Eddie Thorne, and he's going to look into this. Maybe that's what's happening. I think it's either that. It's a completely disconnected son, or it's Eddie Thorne with memories erased, zapped into the future through that portal from the end of season 1. Or is it something else? You guys might have to let me know your theories in the comment section down below. But man, my brain is tingling. It's like sizzling in a good way. Not like a fried sort of like this hurts sort of way, but a good way. And I can't wait to see where this goes. I haven't watched the promo for next week, so I don't know if the promo hints at anything. I'll deal with that after this when I do my trailer breakdown. But oh boy, this episode was good. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on everything we went over in this video, any theories and predictions you have, just your general reactions to the episode. Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.